I think scaling is, at least when it comes to what I do, means finding the right people on the ground and then providing them with whatever they need.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Big Picture Blueprint. I am one of your hosts, Dan Habercost, along with Mason McDonald, and we have an awesome guest for you today. But before I get into that, Mason, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, man. Was in Dallas, Texas this past weekend, and it was 107 degrees. So happy to be back in Colorado, where it's not hotter than hell, and I have mountains in my backyard. And we've been trying to get our guest to move out here, and I know he spent some time, so it'll be a fun show getting to chat with Trevor and hear about what he's up to, and see if by the end of the episode we can get him to move to Colorado with us.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. So, quick intro for everyone. We have Trevor Probandt with us today, and Trevor's down in Texas doing huge land deals, along with quite a few other projects all over the country, I believe, at this point. But I don't want to try and speak to that. So, Trevor, how are you doing, man? Thanks for coming on.
Good. It's freaking hot here. Yeah. If I didn't have children that are in middle school and soon to be in high school, then I would move for sure. And like I said, being able to spend a month in Breck this year was exactly what we needed. And my wife and I, we take the dogs for a walk when it finally cools down every night and bitch and complain about how hot it is and how we hate being here.
Sure.
So anyway, whatever. But yeah, man.
Yeah.
Just rocking and rolling. Like I said, born and raised out here in West Texas. My family had been doing the force appreciation game since the early 90s. Like they've done over 60,000+ acres of stuff. And so,
Wow.
but I wasn't smart enough to do that right off the bat. And so it took me a little while, but now I'm here and we've got stuff going in Arizona, Arkansas, Oklahoma, multiple places in Texas and things like that. But a lot of our stuff is, like I said, is force appreciation. And so that's kind of where we're my little niche is. And now we're doing even more stuff as far as actual development. And that's where it's making me a little queasy. Some of the costs that it takes to build these roads and what these cities and counties and things like this, the rules and regs when it comes to engineering and all that, it makes me want to throw up on my shoes as far as how uncomfortable it is and things like this. But there's a lot of money to be made there.
Absolutely. And Trevor, can you walk or talk through what is a land deal for you? Your niche is unique. You know, a lot of people just think of a land deal as being buying and selling or putting a spec house there. So what does a deal look like in your business today?
Usually my whole deal is I make unaffordable non-trophy assets affordable. So that means, like, especially in Texas, but all across the country, right? Average price per acres have gone through the roof. I mean, we've seen a huge change in the last 5 years, but especially the last 3 years, right? Stuff that you could buy for, $20,000, now they're going for 40 or 50,000 bucks, right? Just as a flip in a lot of these places. And so what that has done is that increased price per acre value has made larger tracts unaffordable for only the very richest of the rich. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I come in and I buy a $3 million place or a $2 million place or a $1.5 million place. And I turn those into assets that are anywhere from $150,000 to $500,000. And there's multiple reasons for that. One, it stays over 150,000 bucks. Banks will lend on it, right? Especially if it's a good asset. It's got good access, water, power, things like this. And if the loan itself is under $500,000, the financial underwriting is much less strenuous than over $500,000. So you can go to your local Capital Farm Credit or things like this. If you wanted to buy these tracts, it's a 2 to 2.5 page application with 2 years of tax returns for them to be able to get lending on those properties. And versus an over $500,000, and they've got to do a deep dive into net worth, all kinds of fun stuff. And so that's kind of our bread and butter. Here lately, we've been doing a lot more of that $150,000 to $200,000 tracks, especially in Texas, 10 to 20 acre tracks. The reason we focus on that size and that price point is because most everywhere in the state, there's some things here, but usually you can keep ag exemption on your tax basis on anything over 10 acres. And so that's kind of what we do. So we'll this deal that we just got done buying outside of College Station, Texas, where Texas A&M University is at. 130 acres, beautiful, got a mix of big trees, creeks, pasture, things like this. We'll come in. We bought it for 1.2, so a little under, was it $9,000 an acre, whatever. We also bought 50% of the minerals with it, which was kind of nice. We're going to come in and spend $350,000 building roads, running power, things like this, and then we're going to cut those 130 acres into approximately 10 lots. And so the price point on that will then go up to anywhere from $20,000 to $22,000 an acre. So that's our whole game plan. Is we try to keep it affordable, right? So we're going to average around $200,000 to $220,000 per track. So that is our most basic forced appreciation play.
I love it. I love it. It's, I think you've said it, buy the ranch, sell the pasture, to create a lot more opportunity based on what the actual demand is, where you're increasing the supply in the market of, we're about to do our first subdivide out in Phoenix. So I'll probably, pick your brain on it, 5.5 acre that we're subdividing into 3 individual 1 acre ones. And I also got one in my inbox in Tomball, Texas, that might be a great project for you that I can send along your way. I know College Station is booming. I grew up in Magnolia, Texas, which is, 30 minutes down the road from College Station. And College Station is crazy. So that's a great deal, but that's expensive, man. Do you have all that cash yourself, or how are you structuring these deals from a financing perspective?
Most of the time, what we do is we'll use a little regional bank for the purchase price, and then we raise all capex expenditures, down payment, capex expenditures, plus 1 year of payments, both principal and interest, and then that's what we do. And so, as cash for improvements, we use anywhere from 15 to 20% down for our down payment. And then we allow, the big deal with that is with the bank, we make sure that they allow individual releases on the properties.
So how have you been able to establish that relationship with that bank? Because, one of the big things in land, and I think what hinders a lot of people from getting involved in the land space, whether it's the flippers out there, or the people that are attempting to do subdivides, whether it's on a larger scale, kind of like what you're talking about, or a smaller scale, is the financeability of it. So how did you kind of go about developing that relationship with a bank where you're not having to put up, 75% or 100% of the purchase price in all cash?
Two things. One, you find a local regional bank, usually that has Texas State or Missouri regional or whatever, right? You do not go to Bank of America. You don't go to these Wells Fargo. No one, you're just pissing in the wind, right? You're just wasting your time on that stuff. You start a relationship, and more importantly, you have all your numbers, and your numbers make sense. If you have a good deal, right, and then you've got lenders around you that are also willing to go on the note, because there's no such thing as a non-recourse development deal. Y'all can just forget that, right? Only way you're going to do that is on an owner finance thing, right? Like that's all you're ever going to have. If you're going to use a bank, if you're going to use a financial institution, you're going to have a recourse loan. So just embrace it, deal with it. Tough shit, right? If you're not willing to put your name on the line, they're not willing to give you the money to get it done, and that's fair because they're the ones that own that sumbitch, not you. So the big deal with that, talk to them, but the big deal is to make sure your numbers are correct, right? And then that's that opportunity to say, hey, I've never done one of these, but I've got this guy, my team around me, my surveyor or my engineering firm, right? You've already built that relationship. You've already talked to, this is the broker that's doing this deal, right? They can talk to them about who you are and what you're doing. All of this is a team sport. You can't hide behind your computer in your Excel spreadsheets and send your text messages or send your effing whatever, right? Like letters. That's not how the game is done. It's not how it's done. It is a team sport. And you're going to have a whole lot of people on your team, right? That you're going to have to build around that. And so that's the key. When you're the weak link, even though you're the one with the hustle, you got to make sure the team around you. And then really it's just based on your numbers. If your numbers are good, they're going to lend on you, right? That's the key. I mean, that's true with all this shit, right? Same thing on a flip deal, right? If you can find a deal that's 40% of market value in a market that's hot, you'll find somebody to lend you the money.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Well, and to that whole conversation regarding the team, I think a lot of people, Trevor, they don't know anything about horizontal development, right? If they come across a big actually raw, a distinction we make on our podcast all the time, Mason, piece of land, who do you hire? Who do you have to contract with to turn that into a developed subdivision with roads and splitting up the lots? What do you even do if you want to do that?
I'll tell you the best way to do that is going to be go to your probably county recorder, at least in my neck of the woods, right? Go to your county recorder and you're going to talk to him and say, hey, I'm dipshit and I want to learn about all this stuff. Can you send me can I look at the last two or three recorded subdivisions in the county, right? They're actually going to have that information. And then you're going to look in that southwest corner, that left bottom corner, and they're going to have a stamp. And it's going to be a stamp of whatever engineering or surveying firm is out there. Then what you're going to do is you're going to use your personal skills and you're going to call that engineering firm and you're going to set up a meeting. And you're going to talk to them about what they do and how they do it, right? Now you have your engineering firm. And you may have to talk to two or three of them, right? Because what you want to do may not fit what they want to do, right? I've got one group that loves doing 10 acres and above. If I talk to them about anything smaller, they just say, thank you, but go to hell, right? Like they don't want to mess with the actual small lots. They hate it. And that's fine. Like that's fine. I know who the other guys are. They're more of the engineering side and they're not as much fun to work with, but one way or other. But go there, find out two or three of them, right? And talk to them. Another thing that you can do, even though the county commissioner or the city commissioner, whatever you want to call them, city council members in your area that you're looking at, you can talk to them about, hey, we've got, I know that you're in charge of this area. Do you have a list of all the engineering firms that bring these subdivisions to the court, right? You can talk to them about that. They're not supposed to tell you, hey, I can't say anybody, but then you'll ask them, hey, what about this guy? And they'll be like, sure, right? Like wink at you, like, yeah, they're probably pretty good. And then other ones they'll say no. But that's the quickest way to know who's actually doing stuff in your neck of the woods and start building a relationship there.
So for your company, what does your org chart look like? And do you have any plans of potentially bringing any of these, surveying groups or engineering firms in-house, or do you want to continue to contract through them?
Here's the trade-off, because we looked at this a year ago, trying to bring on a guy who I love to death, and he's actually bringing me a deal later on today that we're going to look at maybe doing. The thing is all these counties have very specific rules and regs, and all these people know who they need to pat on the back and who they need to kick in the ass, and so it doesn't scale very well. That's what sucks, right? It does. Yeah. It sucks. If you just wanted and I've thought about that again, like I said, I've thought about this, hiring a guy that's semi-retired, a surveyor that's semi-retired that could run out there and mark off 35-acre tracts. If that's all you're doing, that's fine. But if you're going to have to go through the platting process versus just a true meets and bounds, I don't think it scales very well.
I think that's fair. And so, on that, because I'm going to take this time, selfishly, we're doing this subdivide in Maricopa County, Arizona. And what we've been told, it's an over-the-counter process, super easy process to get this done. And it's a small subdivision, so it's, pretty simple. Do you have a tendency to target the counties that are really simple and really easy in these subdivide processes, to make it less of a pain in the ass from, the management of the deal? Or do you have a tendency to go for the more complex, or difficult areas because that's a reduction in competition? Or is it a
They're
little bit of both?
all getting harder. They're all getting harder. They're all getting harder and harder and harder. And it's going to cost more and more money, especially in the state of Texas. Depending on the TCEQ and water is the fight that's going to get terrible. And so depending on where you're at,
Real quick, can you define that?
Texas Commission of Environmental Qualities. They're also in charge of water in the state of Texas. Okay. There's been a lot of people that have come in and sliced and diced all these properties. And again, we mail to them all the time, right? Paper subdivisions, shit like that, right? They, in the state of Texas anyway, if there's water underneath you, you can pump it, right? And that's a big fight. Colorado's completely different. There's no such thing as asking for a water well permit if you got over an acre in the state of Texas. Well, usually over 10 acres, you don't have to. So if you got over 10 acres, you punch as many damn holes as you want to, right? Here's the problem with that. Because these companies that did slice and dice all this shit did not drill water wells, things like this, because you never know what you're going to get, right? As far as who's going to want water one way or the other. Because of that, there's a lot of these people that bought these tracks that drilled these wells, especially west of I-35, right? A lot of these people that drilled these wells and didn't get any water. And so then, not the developer, but the county commissioner gets a phone call and screamed at, and then TCEQ gets a phone call and gets screamed at. Okay. Now what they're making us do, depending on where you're at in the state, is you're now having to do what is called a water feasibility study. It's I think it's a 2008 piece of legislation or stuff that they did with TCEQ. And what that means is, depending on how many acres you have to drill one water well and finish it, drill a second water well within, I can't remember how many feet of it has to be, and then you do a test draw for 36 hours to make sure that there's enough water that they're not pulling all the water from the next adjacent property. Depending on where you're at, that's going to cost you anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 just for the hydrologist. Plus, you're going to have to pay for 2 wells, which could usually be another $40,000 to $50,000. So you're $100,000 into it on just 2 wells. One deal that we're looking at out here was 258 acres. He needed 4 wells. It's going to be about $150,000 that we weren't ready for. So this rules and regs are going to come down. And so because of this, right, the more professional you are, the more capital you have behind you, it will cut down on competition, right? Going back to your question, Mason, it will cut down on competition. I don't necessarily search them out, but I'm starting to, right? Where not every Susie realtor can do this shit, right? Like that's the competition, right? Because a lot of these brokers that you talk to, they do exactly what we do, right? They'll be like, oh, you got it for, they only want $500. They want $500 an acre less than market. I'll buy it myself, right? Which you're not really supposed to do, but whatever. So I say I like the more stringent places, but not really. I don't like them. I just think that there's more opportunity there, and then we'll continue to be there. So you might as well just get used to dealing with the shit, because it's going to happen. I think most
Sure.
people are going to continue to fly over, or there's going to be a flight to easier deals. I'm going to be in Arizona all next week, looking at I guess 6 deals over there, right? And I like it. I like Maricopa and things like that because it is easy to do, especially with your. There's multiple different ways of doing it, right? And yeah, I could come in and I could cut it into 4 parcels. I can sell one of them to Mason, then Mason can cut it into another 4 parcels, right? And then we can all be part of that. Like there's lots of cool stuff there, but there's also everybody else and their dog knows that shit too. So
Oh
anyway,
yeah. Well, and I
that's
think you're
that's
hitting on
my that's my 2 cents.
no, I appreciate it. And I think you're hitting on a point that Dan and I have been talking about a lot, which is water. And in Colorado and Arizona, they did a moratorium a little bit or a little while ago in Phoenix on new water taps and everything, just because of I think it was Middle Eastern money coming in and just paying tons of money for water rights for agricultural land for corn. And so there's so many things that you need to be aware of from a macro perspective related to what's going on in your individual markets. Dan, you looked like you were ready to jump in and say something.
Yeah, I just want to say I think the moral of what Trevor just went through is know what you're getting into. If you're going to buy land and do any sort of improvements to it, you need to talk to the decision maker ahead of time, talk to the local experts, the civil engineering firm, which Trevor just outlined how to get in touch with, and know exactly what you're up against. Maybe you do want to go to the most stringent counties, maybe you want to go to the easiest, but you need to know it ahead of time. That's the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, because it's hard to scale this business no matter what it is you're doing, whether you're doing flipping or subdividing for small subdivisions or some of the larger agricultural subdivisions that Trevor does, where you know all of us in this business want to scale and expand nationwide and everything. But I can tell you, one street over to another street over and the markets that I'm in are the distinguishing factors between
Mm-hmm.
making a shitload of money on a deal and losing a shitload of money on a deal.
That's another thing that I've noticed too. And again, the only reason that I'm able to scale is because I take less percentage of the deals, right? And I give more to people that are running it as project managers, right? Because that's one thing I have noticed is as most people get further along, they specialize. When we specialize in certain areas, it doesn't have to be in their backyard, but just like certain places of Florida, right? Like you're like, this is my
Mm-hmm.
spot, right? Especially right now,
Yep. Yep.
when it comes to building, right? You've got certain spots that you only like working
Mm-hmm.
on because it's your little baby and you know it, good, bad, and
Yep.
ugly, and you got a team there, right? And so
Yeah.
that I think scale to a lot of people means shotgunning. I think scaling is, at least when it comes to what I do, means finding the right people on the ground and then providing them with whatever they need. Because if you don't have people that you know, like, and trust on the ground that are incentivized to do great work, you're just pissing in the wind.
Oh yeah. Well, and let's expand on that a little bit. How have you become the person that your contractors and your investors can trust? I know your family's been in the business for a long time, and you've been in the business for a while now too. How do you feel like you've
Mm-hmm.
developed your track record?
Doing what you say you're going to do. I mean, it's pretty freaking easy, right? And then
Yes.
pay your contractors the day that the invoice hits. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just do good work, right? Like, say what you're gonna do, what you say. Over deliver, under promise. I mean, I don't know, just be a good business person. I don't know what else to. I don't know what else to say.
No,
Yeah.
you're right on. And the funny thing is
Yeah.
that's a lot more rare and valuable than anticipated and expected, especially with how many people are involved in real estate at every level of the business, no matter how far you vertically integrate into, from, brokers to land flippers to wholesalers. If you can do business ethically, you can make money in any of the industries, but you just have to do the right thing. And sometimes what that means is, I'm, I just sold a property this past week, and, you know, my investors aren't going to make as much as they thought, and I'm paying them more out of my profit just to make sure, you know, I care more about the 10th deal than the first or second deal.
Yeah.
And the more you can do
Yep.
stuff like that, the
That
the better it's
is
going to be in
that
the
is
long
the
run.
key to that. Yep, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. If you're not willing to put other people in front of you, if all you're trying to worry about is the scarcity and oh my gosh, can I do this or can I do that or one way or the other, right? Like Dan, what was it last year or year, whatever? Yeah, it was last year. Came down and rode around with
Yeah.
you and things like this. Like if I didn't have any scruples, I could have tried to steal every contractor. I could have started marketing. I could have started trying to build houses, right? Like there are people that do that.
Sure.
There are people that do that, right?
Oh yeah.
Like it sucks, but like when you're again, just what that was this beautiful thing what Mason was talking about, right? Like I'm more worried about the next 10 deals than I am this deal. If you're always willing to put other people first, because that's how people work, you're gonna be just fine.
Yeah, and there's a reciprocity to that, man. There's a reason why I probably all of us, if we need anything, anywhere, anytime, there's someone we can call. And so, yeah, putting relationships before the profit is really essential to having a sustainable long-term business.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's plenty of money to go around, but horizontal development isn't often talked about on podcasts, Trevor. So, I'd love to hear a little bit on a more granular level about the actual costs involved. Can we dive into that College Station deal and talk through what putting in streets and roads actually costs, what the numbers look like?
Yeah. Here's the deal. Most of our stuff is going to be a all-weather road, right? Like I don't have to go in and do chip and seal or anything else like that. We're going to do a 24-foot road. It's going to be. Here's the funny thing: where I'm at, where we have like caliche pits and things like this, we're almost always taking from the actual location. It costs me very little. It costs me like $6 a linear foot to do that because I have the material on site.
Mm-hmm.
College Station is going to cost me nearly $70 a foot because there is no material out there. I'm going to have what would normally cost me about $60,000 to build this road that I'm building is going to cost me nearly $280,000. All right. So I wasn't expecting that when I bought it. I'm not going to lie. The margins are so good, it doesn't really make any difference, but that's something that I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I found it out during due diligence, but it's just one of those deals where like all the rock has to be brought in from way like in the hill country. And so there's just no rock out there that's that kind of product. So I scrambled. I've got a guy that is using recycled concrete right now. I have not seen that. I'm waiting for the quote on that deal. But yeah, so this one we're going to spend, I think it's 3,700 feet. We're going to spend like $278,000. Right, we're going to do some stabilization. Part of it's down in a floodplain, so we'll have to do a little lime stabilization on that. Luckily, with these larger tracks, when it comes to power, those are the three things I always look at. Right, access. I want paved access the best I can. I want power on site. I want water. Well, actually, second would be water, whether that's groundwater or rural water or public water. And then the third one will be power. Power needs to be on site, right? So this one had all of those. That's why we ended up buying it. The power is with Blue Bonnet Co-op. Most of these parcels that we work with out here are going to be a smaller co-op. Most of my tracks actually also, instead of having to bury them to trench everything, we can go overhead with 2 to 3 phase power. No problem. Right now, I'm looking at, I think they're at $17.50 per linear foot. And they put poles every 350 feet. So that's kind of the price there. I think we're at like 44,000 for that. And then the survey is going to cost us about $12,000 to do. So those are our real costs. Plus, we're going to pay brokers. I've got a pretty good one there in College Station. We'll pay them 5% on the sales. Plus, you're going to have 2% or whatever closing cost. Just your normal cost on that. But yeah, that's kind of our bread and butter when it comes to this. There are a couple water wells out there. If we have to drill one, that's another thing that we do. We don't always drill water wells or fence individual tracks. That's something that we will do. But the reason we don't do it beforehand is because one, we don't know how many tracks somebody's going to buy. Sometimes these people will buy 2 or 3 tracks and put it all together. We've also, especially larger tracks, you can drill a water well and run power to the spot you think is going to be the absolute best spot for a house or whatever, and they don't want to use it there. And you just wasted $30,000 running power and drilling a water well you didn't even need, right? So that's something that you always say, hey, we're willing to fence and drill a water well for you, right? They can then wrap those improvement costs into their long-term financing. That's going to save them a lot of money, especially right now with high interest rates. That's a lot of value to a lot of people. Keeps more cash in their pocket today. But yeah, that's kind of what we do. Actually, this one is probably going to be the first one. I'm more than likely going to find there's 2 or 3 tracks that don't have a lot to them, and so I've got the guy that's actually going to build the road actually builds barndominium. Are you familiar with those? Like the metal, right? I am going to basically say I will allow you to buy this from me. I'm going to do an owner finance with really no money down at $20,000 an acre, and he's able to build on top of that and then sell it at a certain price point over the top, and then I get it this way. So this allows me, hopefully, with these interest rates and everything else, this allows us to make it a win-win with the home builder. He doesn't have to buy the lot over the top, and also hopefully helps us turn our dirt a little quicker.
I love all that. I mean, by subdividing and making the individual, lots cheaper, you don't have to worry about the end seller financing component. And then doing something like that, it's essentially, outsourcing a vertical integration opportunity within your business of you're not having to build on it, but you're guaranteed a sale on the land. You're not going to have to deal with something sitting on the market because, in College Station and, most of the markets, land, for me has slowed down a little bit, this past year. But I know for
sure.
new builds, they're not slowing down, especially in a market like that. And then for this one, did you have to do one of those water feasibility studies, or since there were wells out there already, you didn't need to?
Not on this particular
Okay.
one. Not here, and especially because even if I had to, like these, you're at like 130 feet and you're at like 30 gallons per minute, right? It's not a, depending on where everything's at, and I don't have the exact deal here yet, but depending on the tier of your aquifer, they have tier 1, which means they're not shit for water there, right? Tier 2, tier 3, and down. I know the tier 1s apparently is, at least according to some of these guys, is going to be now a state law that you have to get this water feasibility study done. So depending on your game plan, you may have $500,000 or $600,000 in water feasibility studies. So how the hell is that going to work? I don't know.
Sounds like a great negotiating point, Trevor, to get those purchase prices down. Yep.
Well, and I know, and then and because I had this long conversation with a broker buddy of mine, he's like, he's in a county that they just changed a bunch of rules, and he was like, because people did bad jobs, right? Just slicing and dicing, raping and pillaging, things like this.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, now I got to go back to my landowners and say, hey, man, your property's worth 20% less of what it was.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not. And here's the hard part is there's no value, no agricultural value for a lot of this stuff, right? Like it's not row stuff in Iowa, right? Like, which is trades at a commodity price, right? You know what 1,000 acres of good corn, right, dirt is worth in Iowa. Out here, you can't make any money raising, sheep or goats or cows. And so you can't there's no basis on that. And then your only buyer is a recreational buyer. And the values have gone up. And they can't afford 1,000 acres. They can afford 200. I mean, it kind of sucks. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But as the developer, you just got to make sure that your head's on a swivel.
So, what are your thoughts on the current land market, at least in the markets that you're in throughout Texas and Arizona and wherever else you said at the beginning?
Texas, Arizona, Oklahoma, Florida, all these places, right? Like things are going to continue to happen as long as people keep coming there. Jobs are going to be there. So the jobs are going to be there. The people are going to be there. The money's going to be there. It's going to continue to grow and grow. I still think that there's really cool opportunities in some of these places that you've never heard of, right?
Yeah.
Like outside of Kansas, like I get people that call me from, my podcast and stuff like this. They're like, oh man, I got this deal outside of Kansas City and this, and this. And like, it's going to cost them like $8,000 and they're going to make $400,000 on it. Right. And you're just like, huh,
Whoa.
it's amazing the opportunities that are there, but things are definitely, it's going to be slower with 10% interest, man. It's freaking ridiculous, right? Like it's just, it is what it is. I still think that there's a really, really good option, right, to buy stuff pretty darn cheap and to turn those into long-term notes. I think that's always going to be that option there. But as far as the country, the states that I usually work, there's a reason I'll work them. That's because there's people moving there.
Yep.
And Trevor,
I'm not smart enough to do anything else.
No, I mean it goes back to what we were talking about. Don't allow scope creep. Stick to what you're good at and get really good at it, and then give your money to other people that are good at other things. Where do you get all these deals from? Are they all on market, off market? And if off market, how do you source them?
Man, I've sent hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail over the years and everything, but most of my stuff is going to be on market relationships. People that know me now, right? Like you start getting a little traction. They know that, hey, even though I bring this deal, I'm going to get paid one way or the other, right? Trevor's not trying to screw me out of something. I think that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. But I think very few people actually make offers on properties that are on market, especially if you see them that are really high, right? You're like, dude, where the hell did they come up with this number? Watch it for 6 months and make an offer. You'll be amazed at what people will take.
Yep. That's such a good point. I hope everyone listening is taking note of that.
No,
asking price means nothing.
Don't.
well, everyone listening, for all mine that are ridiculously high, just make an offer, man. I might accept it. Because it's one of those things where a lot of the markets that I'm in, or Trevor or Dan that we're in sometimes, is there's a lot of speculation. It's especially with the retail buyer or the builder. We don't know what it's worth, and the land broker doesn't know what it's worth. It's a unique product, and that's sometimes where we make the most money, and we just kind of throw down the market of whatever we think it is. So make offers. The worst thing that happens is someone says no.
Yep.
That's it, man. And I haven't done this yet. I need to find somebody that, I may just have a buddy of mine that comes in and just makes offers on every 35 to 40 acre parcel in eastern Colorado and see how many we buy at 50 cents on the dollar, just on market, right? Like, and just turn them into notes. I may have to do that, right? Just to be like, here you go.
You can buy in, southeastern Colorado. I've paid as little as, $25 an acre for 35 acre tracts. I mean, it's there's not much you can do with them.
Depends
you
on
can't
where you're
farm them. Yeah, no, exactly. But eastern Colorado, there's opportunity there. It's just Kansas.
Eastern El Paso County's off limits, but
I've already got one. That's one.
I know.
Like that's where that one's at. So that I'll talk to you about later. So,
yeah.
But I mean, I think that there's, any of these markets, just, you have to have a game plan, right? But I have a game plan. Like, I don't just run around with an equity stick beating the shit out of everything, right? Like, I have a game plan that I can, if it's the right deal, I can pay 110% of market value and still hit my numbers. If it doesn't have much CapEx, if it's got rural water at the road, with tons of frontage and power down there, I may spend 10 grand to make $300,000, right?
Yep.
I'll buy that all day long for market value. But I have started doing some more of the hired an American cold caller the other day. I had a call with them earlier today, kind of tweaking my script because they come from the house side and they had experience and things like this. But I'm like, I don't need you to beat on these people, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just need to see whether or not they need to sell. These are the counties that I know really well, right? Like, I just need them to be added to my sphere and my ecosystem. And that's kind of where I need to be. And I've done a terrible job with that. I'm slowly getting better with it. I need as many landowners in these part of the world to know that I'm here to help them, right? I'm here to buy it. I'm here to do whatever. And then building, if I've got 10,000 landowners in multiple counties or whatever the hell it is that I really like, I should be able to market to them once a quarter and they know who I am and I'm here to help them. That's what brokers and things like this do very well. And none of us do worth a shit. And that's where I've got to man up on that because after a year or two, right? It's just the rule of big numbers or whatever, right? Like there's going to be 5, 6, 8, 10 of them that want to sell in a year. And I only need 2 or 3 deals to live.
I'm glad you said this. Yep. So, great example. I've been marketing to Pueblo, West Colorado since 2019. I've mailed every landowner, cold call every landowner there dozens of times. And yesterday we got a $25,000 to $30,000 lot at $8,000. Why? Because she was ready to sell, and we had been ever present in her mind. So when she was ready to sell, she called us. So just like the brokers that bring you deals, Trevor, it's the same thing. They bring you deals because they know you're going to close, just like that seller called us because they've heard about Front Range land dozens and dozens of times. So that is such an important point. When you have a market that's producing, mail those people, call them, whatever your marketing is, endlessly.
Yeah, and if you can, like that's what the thing that I'm trying to do with the cold callers is like I need an email address, and that way I just once a quarter they get an email with, hey, what's going on with Trevor and what's going on in your market, right? Just like an agent. I mean, I've got my license too, right? Like so I could potentially list it or whatever, but like that's what you're trying to do is you're trying to build that sphere as big as humanly possible, right? Because that's the only thing that I'm worried about, and that comes from my personal scar tissue of having grown up on a ranch and having to see part of it sold off, is because I know that most people, especially these older folks, are dirt rich and cash poor. How can I help them? If they call me, I've got multiple different ways that we can both make it a win-win. That's where I'm at, right? And that's where I want to be. That's why I'm trying to get there. I don't want to be just this guy that runs around and says, I can only offer you 50, 60 cents on the dollar at top, right? Like, grow up a little bit. Let's become a little more elegant.
And ethical too. Of it's the idea, especially with the landowners that you're working with. Of stewardship is so important for so many people, and making sure that whenever they sell their land or give their land, that it's going to be made to be used in the highest and best use possible. And that's something cool about this business.
Well, but here's the flip on that, Mason. Just sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. But like, if you call me, I've got one, like I can come with an option. I can still get you your number, right? Say we do a joint venture. I can keep that property in ag, even if it's 35-acre tracts, right? Maybe you got something on the west slope, right? That a guy wants to sell you, right? We can still keep the usability of that land, the production of that land, instead of me having to come in and build condos on it for you to get your price, right? To the highest and best. Maybe we can use it for the best usage based on what you want as a landowner, right?
So, and what if we could
come in and do it that way?
Of not come in and gentrify and do that kind of thing. Of stewardship is just making sure that the land is taken care of and that we're stewards of it. Where, hey, you own 1,000 acres. There's 4 people in the country that can buy that land. We'll subdivide it, keep it ag. And I mean, you can actually create beautiful agricultural subdivisions that have open space and this beautiful. I mean, my parents building on 35 acres in Pagosa Springs, ag land. They have cows that run through their property now that are the neighborhood cows, and it's it's cool to be able to see. And I think that stewardship word is something that we can all get behind, and especially, the folks that are in the ag industry is a word that they really, really care about.
You guys make great points there. That deal I got yesterday, I got that deal because she goes, well, I just want to see this actually built on. And I've gotten a lot of mailers from people out of state, and I don't think they're really going to build on it. They're just trying to flip it. And I'm legitimately going to put either a 2 or 4 unit on that. And so she was thrilled. And she goes, yeah, I don't need to make much money on it. I bought it at almost nothing. And that was her number. And so the reason I got that deal, just like as a corollary to what you're saying, is because I'm actually going to build on it. And so she was okay just doubling from what she bought it. So there's a deal.
It's found
Absolutely.
money to her, right? Like, yeah, for sure. And that's what's cool is I think it's in Rigsby or whatever. It's right on the Idaho side. It's just west of Jackson Hole and everything. I saw a deal the other day, and they've got 5-acre tracts that they cut into it, but they literally have like organic farming all around them. Right, like so you got like a 5-acre tract. You got 1 acre with the house on it, and then the other 4 acres, which they're all together there, it's a working farm, right? And that's how they're keeping their ag numbers down. It's all this other stuff, and it looks cool because they got the damn Tetons way in the background, right? And so you can see that you're part of this. Obviously, I'm sure you have to do things differently. You're not dropping the certain kind of insecticides or pesticides, or you know what I mean, right in somebody's backyard. But like me, I live in a subdivision right next to cotton field. My 2 neighbors are cotton fields, right? And so I don't know. I think that I'm over this trying to shoot everybody in the foot. There's multiple different ways to make all kinds of money, providing real value to landowners.
I love it. And the area you're at, man, special place in my heart. I went dove and quail hunting out there all the time as a kid. Tons of fun. Know the good people out there. Probably last technical question for you, Trevor, as we start to wrap up this show is, with the numbers. We've talked about purchasing land anywhere from 30 cents to 110 cents on the dollar compared to market price. How are you able to go in and create the pro forma for a project and underwrite a deal from a financial perspective? Or is it you that's doing it, or do you have a team member doing it? And maybe what are some of those numbers that you're looking at, whether from an IRR perspective or, how do you underwrite the deal?
Yeah. Usually whenever I come to a force appreciation, I want a 50% rate of return on my money, simple rate of return before I really dive into shit. Right. So if I'm buying it for 5, it needs to be worth 10. Usually with what we do, we can usually at about 30 to 35% usually shows that I can hit over 100% rate of return when I use leverage, depending on the CapEx involved in the deal. But right now, I only want to do really good deals. Like I'm to the point where I'm like, I'm only going to do it if it's 100%.
Yes.
And then you know what I mean? So like that one in College Station, right? Like we'll be all in at just under 10,500 an acre. And then the exit price or I guess it's 10,500 exit price at anywhere from 20,000 to 22,000, right? Like that's where I want to be, right? I want to be able to double my value. Obviously, it doesn't have to be that way. If I know it's a really hot market, right? Like if I call Dan and Dan's like, "Oh, son of a bitch," right? Like, yeah, we can turn these into 35s and they sell for this in a hurry. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit different, but that's where I want to start off with. And then I use my own comps. I've got my, the super high end lands.com deal where I pull a lot of my comps on that
big
kind of stuff. And so I know kind of what the costs are. Yeah. But like that. And then I'm always calling the brokers around that particular product, right? That, I see one that's worth 200 acres. I'm going to call whoever's got the 10-acre tracts all around there and see what's going on over there, right? Once I kind of find an area that looks pretty interesting to me, that's what I'm going to do. And so I'm always trying to play by the 50% rule, and then I'll dive into it a little bit more. But to be honest with you, if it's just perfect, if I look at it and it's got all the frontage, it's got all the water, it's got all the power, I'm not worried about the price right off the top of the bat, because anytime you do these calculations and you have very little to no CapEx, man, it sure makes them a lot easier to take on, right? that it's a lot easier to take on. Just because your rate of return just goes through the roof, right? I'm always going to try to shoot for 120% or better rate of return on my capital.
Beautiful. And one quick question we didn't ask: time frame, like the College Station deal. What's the time frame from closing to completion?
From your lips to God's ears, hell, I don't know, right? Like anywhere from it won't take us very long to get it done as far as the subdivide. Like there's not a plating process involved. We can do it meets and bounds.
Okay.
And so, but okay, say you got to go through a plating process, and say your surveying engineering guys can get to it pretty quick. Say within 2 or 3 weeks. You're looking at 90 to 120 days to get that done. But you can be building roads and things like that. So you may be probably 120 days from you buy it to where you can start kind of marketing it. And a lot of times that's just on you. And so it may take you. I talked to my dad, and of course he does only like bigger, like recreational properties as far as the prices and getting sold out. And so he said most of his projects from the day he buys it to the day he sells it out is usually 2 years.
Okay. So not bad, not that long.
That's fantastic. And yeah, I mean, just to pull
something out of that, it just depends on what you consider fast, right?
Well, and that's why looking at numbers, from that simplified approach of just a cash on cash return, and then convert that into an annualized return. For the people that aren't good at finance and don't know what we're talking about, if we're looking at NPV and IRR and stuff like that, if you're getting a 50% cash on cash return in 6 months, that's essentially 100% annualized return. So kind of break those numbers down in that way where, Dan will have deals where it'll be, 20, 30, 40% cash on cash return in 30 days, which you annualize that's like 150 trillion% annualized return. So, break the numbers down based on what your operating expenses are going to be, or capital expenditures, your debt service and all that. And then look at it from an annual perspective, and it might make you feel better. If you think you're only getting 8% on a 6 week deal or something like that. But Trevor, this has been a ton of fun. Dan, do you have any other questions for Trevor? Or Trevor, any last thoughts you want to say, or anything that the viewers can do to help you in your business?
Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say the biggest thing. I mean, we got to give you a chance to talk about your podcast if you'd like to share. But yeah, any other closing thoughts you have as well?
Dozens and dozens of people listen. So my mom just puts it on replay all the time. That's how she signs in with different IP addresses to send me reviews. Podcast is Land Investing, the Dirt Road to Wealth. No BS, nothing cool, but it's the straight dope, right? Like just kind of like this conversation was. No, we're not here to sugarcoat anything. The best way to help me or to help me help y'all is to reach out to me. You can either shoot me an email at trevor@gowestlands, LANDS.com, or give me a shout, 940-736-8797. That'd be another thing I'd suggest to y'all, Mason, Dan, send out your number, dude. Like you have no idea like how many opportunities you can have when you're just open and honest, right? And you're going to spend a lot of time talking to people that have no idea what they're talking about, and that's okay. But if you come across a seller that is in the state of Texas or Oklahoma right now that's got some good road frontage that isn't just a complete a-hole, anything probably 60 acres and above, I'm here to help out any way we can. But what I'm running right now is we're running overrides on a lot of stuff, especially with new folks. You may make 10 to 15% with no money, no credit, anything else like that, and kind of let you run the deal. And if you want to keep working together, that's great. If not, you've got one underneath your belt, and you've kind of built your team out there. So,
heck yeah. We'll make sure to put your contact info in the show notes. To be honest, that's how I originally got a hold of Trevor. Found his phone number through the Dirt Road to Wealth. And so gave him a call a little over a year ago to, shoot the shit, talk land. He was on his way to go hunting whenever I talked to him. So that is his cell phone number. He will answer the phone. Trevor, it's been fantastic having you on the show. Ton of fun, tons and tons of information that you can take and utilize in your business. Once again, this is Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkost with the Big Picture Blueprint. We'll catch you guys next time.